Good morning again, everyone. It is my privilege to be speaking with you from this pulpit. It is always an unnerving privilege. It is my prayer today that the words I declare might convey inspiration, challenge, and hope. Let us bow our heads for a moment. Amen. On Thursday, March 17, after completing the exit meeting for the ATS Accreditation Reaffirmation Team, in which those present learned of the preliminary outcomes from the visit and identified the matters that needed address in the months and years ahead, I traveled with President Williams and his spouse to Phillips Theological Seminary for a conference on systemic racism, anti-racism, and reconciliation. While I traveled, we had a variety of conversations, even stopped for a delicious lunch and wonderful carrot cake. But while all of that was occurring, two questions were running around in the back of my brain, influenced by the ATS visit and also the SACS COC visit that took place 2 weeks before. And here are the questions. How do we at Brite resist the temptation to conclude that, given our sense that we probably have 10 years of accreditation from both SACS and ATS, we can soon archive the materials we prepared over 2 years, set aside most of our analyses, and consign considerations on areas of needed growth and proposals for institutional development to the administrators. And then in 2030, 2 years before another accreditation reaffirmation visit, we pull out the materials, review them, and start a new process all over again. Then there was the associated question. As the crisis in theological education persists in the years ahead, and we wrestle with the consequences for Brite's institutional life at every level, what will keep us from the disarray that easily occurs when fear, frustration, anger, and anxiety overtakes us, and we are tempted to become preoccupied with self-preservation and the accompanying distrust of anything and anyone that appears threatening? I went to bed in Tulsa that Thursday night and woke up the next morning with these questions still on my mind. And then, in one of the early conference sessions on Friday morning, the way was opened for a potential answer when a presenter began her session with the chorus she had learned while visiting a local congregation. She encouraged us to join her in singing the chorus, "We Say Yes." And immediately the thought emerged in my mind with unusual force that in the theme of this chorus was an important part of the answer to my question. In the present elaborated form, it is as follows. While not ignoring the features of Brite's life that are troubling, annoying, disappointing, and while worried about the crisis in theological education generally, with the implications for Brite, to what can we say yes to collectively? To what can we say yes that has to do with Brite's development as an institution, so that a self-transcending capacity is generating, and we're able to commit ourselves passionately to corporate welfare while wrestling with our individual concerns? So, what is this yes about? In its very basic definition, yes is to agree, to affirm, to accept, or approve. Well, in a time of worry and insecurity such as we are in, these are often anxiety-generating terms for many, compounded by the prevailing anti-institutionalism in our society. They are easily associated with the desire of a controlling few to lure others into acquiescence to determinations that are not in the interest of those perceived to be subordinate. Given this understanding of yes, the appropriate disposition toward the consideration I have in mind is suspicion and resistance. And this is suspicion and resistance that undermines the capacity to collaborate in ventures that involve vulnerability and risk. Indeed, there is much in contemporary Western life that socializes us against the yes that I'm encouraging us to consider. There's a way the modern discovery of individuality has been turned towards individualism. Given this turn, the primary question is often not how one might develop and employ the gifts and talents that characterize their individuality in relation to the gifts and talents of other individuals, so that we might together build community and pursue common goals that generate the healthiest environment for mutually beneficial individual pursuits. Instead, with individualism, it is how might one extract the most from a situation or context, or operate in such a way that individual purposes are most benefited. Often this individualism and anti-institutionalism is pursued with the support of a social hermeneutic that disparages the approach of critical openness, that approach that wrestles with illusion, ignorance, and prejudice in the interest of more authentic engagement and fruitful solidarity. Instead, this hermeneutic presupposes the position that human relations and institutional dynamics are characterized primarily by brutal competition between regimes of power in which the domination-subordination binary is always in play. This being so, our interpersonal interactions and involvements in institutions become more preoccupied with unmasking structures of power than pursuing common ground. Having been nurtured in post-colonial Jamaica, which, like many other small countries in the world, has often been pawns in the chess games between power nations, I appreciate the latter disposition, that it is not without merit. African-American sociologist Patricia Hill Collins is also not unique in her claim that dominance constitutes a defining feature of American society overall. And it is the case that institutions tend to be self-justifying and self-perpetuating. We should not be naive about this. That said, I have also come to recognize over my long life that rabid suspicion and the relentless pursuit of deconstruction often challenges the capacity for hospitality and compassionate engagement of and with the other. Without careful monitoring, our ability to discern possibilities for change and signs of renewal diminishes, and we lose the capacity to participate in creative transformation that requires the ability to say yes. Yes to things we have not seen before. Yes to things we have not done before. Yes to things that pull us beyond ourselves and our personal interests. In the midst of turbulence, anxiety, even suffocating structures, yes is the struggle to retain a disposition of hope and expectancy, and the consequent willingness to take risks in the pursuit of a more just, merciful, loving state of affairs in the world. By yes, I mean the stubborn practice of the hermeneutics of hope, whereby we interrogate the present circumstance, challenge prevailing institutional dynamics, disrupt the established system in order to open the way for the emergence of something life-affirming and humanizing, something in which we are committed to participate as we say yes. I'm convinced that our reading from Isaiah 43 portrays a situation in which the prophetic voice in the narrative is encouraging the people to a disposition of yes. Here was a group of people dehumanized, dispersed, fragmented, a people overcome by a disposition of hopelessness generated by entrapment in the dominating Babylonian system. Their feeling of abandonment is evidenced by questions asked in Isaiah 40:27 that follows and opens up to words of reassurance. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from God? What despair! And my right is disparaged by my God. Have you not known? The prophetic voice asked. Have you not heard? The prophetic figure of the narrative proceeds in colorful and dramatic language to remind this people of who God is and what is possible with God. This is part premised on the ways God had acted on their behalf in the past. It had to be on the basis of their presumed awareness of what had occurred before that the attempt at reassurance would be convincing. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, and flames will not set you ablaze. Yes, you will suffer. Yes, you will be overturned, but you will not be defeated or destroyed. Surely, it is the Exodus motive that is being utilized in verses 16 and 17, where we hear, the one who made a way through the sea, a path through the mighty waters, who drew out the chariots and horses, the army and the reinforcements together, and they lay there never to rise again, extinguished, snuffed out like a wick. That is your God who is with you and for you in the midst of the waters, in the midst of the flames. Yes, in the most dismal period of your ancestral past, when it seemed as if your ancestral people were doomed, in the midst of their destitution, something surprising and new emerged to set a motley array of people on a previously unforeseen path to become a new type of community. Those of us who have read Dr. Dolores Williams remember that this is characterized by a way out of no way. Yet, having reminded Israel of their ancestral past, the prophet hastens to challenge them. Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. The point, I believe, is this. Even though you must learn, or we must learn from the past, resist the urge to become fixated on it. You will not realize new possibilities by hankering after some romanticized period that is behind you, the good old days, so that you conclude that the way the things occurred in that era should determine the details of the present and the future. Here I'm reminded of Professor John Caputa's conception of the indeterminate in life, which lays an unconditional claim on human beings and calls us beyond normative ways of being and doing, so that we are able to envision new possibilities for living, even experience possible impossibilities. This is part of the challenge of yes. In the midst of the most dismal, disheartening situation that appears as if there's no solution, are we able to imagine possible impossibilities? Are we able to say yes, which opens up our imagination of unforeseen solutions? So, can we not see it? The possible, impossible? The prophet asked the people in exile, and I ask us this morning, in the midst of the stresses and strains of life and the troubles that surround us personally and institutionally, can you not see it? The possible, impossible? The prophet points the people to new streams of refreshing, replenishing. There shall be waters in the desert. New things can emerge, and animals will be jumping around and prancing and experience new and renewed life in that which was barren and distressing and seemingly unproductive. Can you say yes to that? The prophet is asking Israel. And I believe that prophetic voice comes to us now. Whatever is the circumstance in which we are, is there in life that which encourages an imaginative hope, a hermeneutics of hope that enables us to say yes, the kind of yes that opens our imagination to new possibilities, even possible impossibilities. In our time, is this about mainstream Christianity or formerly mainstream Christianity? Is this about the Christian church, disciples of Christ? Is this about mainstream denominations that have traditionally fed our student population at Brite? Is this about liberal, progressive theological education? Is this Brite with its diminishing student population? Is this the way you and I are experiencing life this morning? Are we able to say yes, that opens our imagination to the possible, impossible? Systems theory, complexity theory, and process relational thought that influences me a lot might help us appreciate that the call to experience the possible impossible might involve a number of things. It is a call to pursue interconnection and relationality, without which new and prevailing features of life do not emerge. It is that the call. It is oftentimes the ability to say yes that opens up our ability to see new possibilities, new avenues for life. That which could be characterized, on the other hand, by possible impossibilities. What I'm speaking of is not the erasure of differences, but the nurturing of complex solidarity through relationship and focused attention through cooperation. The prophet says, Israel, say yes. Imagine that which is emerging and allow yourself to be galvanized to pursue it, guided by your imagination. Linking systems, language with Whiteheadian conceptions. Answering the prophet's call. Can't you see it? Are you able to say yes? This links strength of beauty with intensity of experience and generates novelty and synergy. A novelty and synergy in which the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, there are properties of whole and healthy systems, be they family, congregation, village, or divinity school, that are not found in any of the parts taken separately, and which only emerge through ordered relationships between contrasting components. When people with their differences and diversities and complexities are able to say yes together. A yes that does not erase our differences, but provides the framework for cooperation and relationality. As it was for Israel in exile, so it is for us. Yes means believing together, anticipating together, looking for signs of hope together, grasping opportunities together, helping each other resist the temptation to isolation and individualism, going forward together to meet the future that is coming to meet us, the future which is possible impossibilities. With this in mind, I remind us that global history, which includes the life of human beings and other co-inhabitants of the earth, has been characterized by numerous epochal shifts in which forms of life, civilizations, worldviews, forms of spirituality, the institutional forms of Christian faith have thrived, collapsed, or morphed into other expressions that, while carrying elements of previous forms, are radically different in character and operation. It is the character of existence in which we participate. Things rise, things fall, things come together, they separate. And in the dynamics of life and the ability to cooperate in unique ways come evolutionary processes that contribute newness and novelty, that continue to shape the earth and will continue to shape our experiences and our institutions if we are able to say yes. So, we have a future ahead of us. We have a quality enhancement plan. We are getting prepared to work on a long-range plan for the institution. There is homework that our creditors have set us. There are challenges around us, among us, that we need to address together. And like the people of Israel, in the midst of their desert experience, in the midst of their challenge and despair, I encourage us to consider the ability to say yes. Not because it will bring us into uniformity, but that because together it will help us achieve complex relationality, from which emerges novelty, even possible impossibilities. Amen.